It's a very good evening and welcome to Network. My name is Spomela Lezondi. Now, South Africa celebrated Heritage Day on the 24th of September, and the 24th of September is Heritage Day in South Africa, and the day Zulu King Shaka died. The new Blackberry was revealed in the last week. The iPhone had a few problems and we saw some pretty cool solar-powered cars. There's information on what the South African National Space Agency is doing during this year's Space Week. Remember that we are live. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook and Twitter. We're on News Network at sabc.co.za and email. Let's start with your social media and technology news. Sasol is currently embarking on its Solar Car Challenge, which started yesterday. This is a race of solar-powered vehicles that started in Pretoria and will end in Cape Town on October 4. Network producer Lebogang Sejake was at the start of in South Africa's capital.
Ready, set, and off they went as Science and Technology Minister Naledi Pandor raised the flag to declare the beginning of Sasol's Solar Challenge. This is an initiative the minister deems important.
Well, I think this is the beginning of innovation for South Africa in looking at whether we can actually get to a point where we have solar-powered vehicles.
Pupils from Maragon, a Johannesburg private school, were ecstatic to be the first participating high school. They are competing against 5 South African universities and 3 teams from overseas.
We're really excited. I mean, we're the first school to actually compete this year. We're really eager to go out and just show South Africa what we've got.
Fossil fuels will run out, so this is just to get the students a bit excited about the future. So the thing is, we think this is the future. That's why we are really training our students, and that's what gives us a bit of an edge over other high schools, I mean even universities.
The solar-powered vehicles were a great marvel to those in attendance. These are innovations that most children would appreciate, even those from underprivileged backgrounds who were visibly not at the event. The minister says the schools participating are chosen by universities.
The universities form partnerships with schools as well as Sasol. And I know Sasol is involved with thousands of schools throughout the country. So we've got to encourage the universities that are active in this project to link up with public schools, and particularly with young black people.
The 8 days challenge started on September 27th at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, in Pretoria. It will go through Bloemfontein and finally end in Cape Town on October 4th.
Johannesburg has held a successful Social Media Week. Speakers at Social Media Week tackled various issues. One of the speakers was Bushera Bashir, who heads up Umuzi Academy, a South African youth development social enterprise. There was Zimbabwean-born Dr. Sindisiwe van Zyl, who uses social media and her blog to inform and educate a broader audience about health issues. There was also Mark Sharman, who is the co-founder of Retroviral, an award-winning digital communications agency. Many of these events are held in other cities around the world. Some cities that have hosted Social Media Week events include Lagos, Mumbai, and London. The Independent Communications Authority of South Africa has released a gazette inviting the public to tell it what it thinks of the Vodacom acquisition of Neotel. This happens as Vodacom says it will use Neotel to speed up the introduction of a high-speed fiber optic cable in the country. The cable should improve the quality of internet in South African homes.
The Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA, has invited interested parties to tell it what they think of the Neotel acquisition by Vodacom. This following an application by Vodacom to acquire 100% shares of Neotel. Neotel would still be a separate part of Vodacom business even though shares would be transferred to Vodacom. Neotel, which started operating in South Africa in 2007, was created to compete with Telkom. Telkom has held a monopoly over fixed-line communications market, but the move by ICASA might please Vodacom's competitors. In May, Cell C CEO Jose De Santos was vocal about their displeasure about the acquisition. Those opposed the acquisition have about 21 days to voice their concern. At the same time, Vodacom says it plans to use the Neotel acquisition to speed up introduction of its high-speed fiber optic cable. The new cable aims to connect at least 5,000 businesses by March 2015.
South African soft drink vending machines are soon to become Wi-Fi hotspots. This was an announcement made by BT Global Services. They're working with Coca-Cola on this project.
South Africans will soon be getting more than their money's worth when going to buy a can of Coke from a vending machine. Not only will these machines dispense thirst quenchers, but it will also serve as free Wi-Fi hotspots. Coca-Cola South Africa partnered with BT Global Services. The two giants say that this initiative is to make internet accessible to impoverished communities across the country. Late former South African President Nelson Mandela's hometown of Qunu in the Eastern Cape is one of the first areas to be connected to the internet via a vending machine. Bushbuck Ridge in Mpumalanga is another beneficiary of this initiative. We've heard of other initiatives that helped impoverished communities connect to the internet. Samsung has also told us about its digital villages that are in townships like Cosmo City in Johannesburg. But these are areas in desperate need of some basic services and resources. One wonders if Wi-Fi connectivity really helps in improving conditions in these regions.
Now, the bloggers and journalists behind me have been in Ethiopian jails for more than 150 days now. The group is believed to have been arrested for what it writes in its websites. There have been many calls for them to be released, and there is even a hashtag on Twitter which is Free Zone 9 Bloggers. The prosecution says the journalists and bloggers organized themselves into subgroups to overthrow the government, but it doesn't say exactly what they did and how they went about doing that. Zone 9 bloggers have been detained under the 2009 anti-terrorism law. In August, the 3 journalists and 6 bloggers were denied bail. Ethiopia doesn't have an independent newspaper. There is also no independent television station. Blogs, websites and social media would probably be the only methods that enable the country's journalists to have an independent voice. E-commerce is growing in Africa. Next up, we go to the Ivory Coast, where many are shopping on a website called Kaimu. As this is becoming an increasingly popular method of purchasing goods, infrastructure to fight off cyber criminals becomes a huge challenge.
Kaimu helps entrepreneurs post their products on various websites. It also arranges for the collection and delivery of the goods. Unlike conventional online sales platforms, Kaimu acts as a consultancy, offering store owners advice on how best to run their business. For the service, Kaimu takes 10 to 20% commission of every item sold.
We usually sell most of our merchandise, but often we don't receive the final payment, which is not good. But when we sell our merchandise via Kaimu, we receive payment quickly. The buyer will buy his merchandise from us and then will pay us immediately.
But challenges of poor infrastructure remain, and getting people to trust websites with their bank card details.
In the beginning, we faced several serious challenges, such as cybercrime, which required a certain level of caution, as well as operating within a system that was not ready for e-commerce. We were quite pragmatic and swift.
More than 200 market sellers and wholesalers in this Abidjan market have a presence on the e-commerce market. Kaimu now operates in 10 countries in Africa and 7 in Asia.
Blackberry has released a new phone called the Passport. It's hoping it will save the struggling Canadian handsets manufacturer. The phone is square in shape and is exactly the same size as a passport book. The Blackberry Passport has a 4.5-inch screen, which is also square. The new handset still has a keyboard, which is a traditional Blackberry feature, but the new keyboard has been limited to just 3 rows. There is a touchscreen feature for those who prefer that on their phones. It retails at close to 7,000 Rand in the North American market. After the break, we'll talk about Space Week, which is starting in a few days' time. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook and Twitter.
Accra is a beautiful city of contradictions.
Funerals in Ghana are colorful and flamboyant. Ghana coffins are functional coffins made by specialized carpenters. These colorful objects, which have developed out of figurative palanquins, are not only coffins but considered real works of art. Each year, festivals and durbars are held in various parts of the country to celebrate the heritage of the people.
That's Kaleidoscope, Sundays 5:30 p.m. on SABC News.
It's SABC Network on Facebook and Twitter, News Network at sabc.co.za, and email. Welcome back. Now, World Space Week is starting in a few days' time. This takes place as India has just become the 4th country in the world to send a spacecraft into Mars orbit. India's low-cost mission to Mars was only around 800 million rand. It's an amount equivalent to a tenth of what the United States usually spends. So what lessons can Africa learn from this?
The second stage handed over the flight to the third stage.
After successfully entering the Red Planet's orbit on Wednesday, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the mission was a near impossible push to complete the trip on its maiden attempt.
History has been created today. We have dared to reach out into the unknown and have achieved the near impossible. I congratulate all ISRO scientists as well as all my fellow Indians on this historic occasion.
Mars is the closest planet to Earth, and exploring it could prove to be lucrative for the countries that get there first. Even some ordinary South Africans have applied to permanently inhabit Mars.
Having people on Mars, of course, will be a huge step forward in terms of the kind of research that can be done, because at the moment, of course, there's only equipment out there. But I think it's probably more likely that life did exist previously on Mars rather than possibly still existing now.
Yeah.
But that's one of the fascinating questions that we'll try to answer.
Yeah. While some ordinary South Africans have applied for a one-way, no-return mission to inhabit Mars, the South African government has so far not proven to explore the Red Planet.
We have ignition.
The country has a successful rate of satellite launches, but none so far have headed Mars way. With India's recent cheap Mars launch, perhaps this year's World Space Week would inspire African countries to dare explore Mars.
Now, World Space Week is observed from 4 to 10 October. The week celebrates satellite communication and navigation technology industries. Joining me in the studio to talk about this is Christo Krieg from the Secunda Amateur Radio Club. Hello, and thank you for being a part of our network tonight.
It's a pleasure, Sipo.
Now, what happens on World Space Week?
World Space Week was declared by the UN General Council on December the 6th, 1999, and they celebrate space and the technologies around space all over the world during that week.
Now, you guys are going to be doing something special this year.
Yes, we are doing something special. Also, 4th of October 1957 was the launch of Sputnik. We are going to launch another Sputnik on the 4th of October at Vryburg. It will be part of our near space balloon project.
Tell us about that, the South African Sputnik.
It's a small replica. It's about a tenth of the size, and it will also transmit Morse code, and all the radio amateurs in South Africa will be able to receive it and decode it. And there's always a special card that we will give to the people who will send in the data to us. You're
working with some school children on this. What are you doing with school children?
Yes, we are trying to encourage the children to think about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in a different and very practical way, and in a way that entices their minds to think a little bit. You know, space is the final frontier, and we are just stimulating a little bit of that with the children.
And you will be in Secunda, but it's going to be somewhere else.
Yes, the launch will take place in Vryburg in the northwest province, and then there will be some children at Hartbeeshoek at Swanza, and there will be children at Secunda Hoërskool in Secunda, where there is satellite command stations. The main command station will be in Vryburg, and we will have a link, internet link between all 3 sites. Luckily, the people from SANSA will do a presentation on GPS and guiding the way, as the Space Week 2014 theme is. And in Secunda, there will be a UNISA demonstration on robotics as well.
So the pupils that you're going to be with in Secunda can then monitor what's happening in Vryburg or in Hartbeespoort?
Yes, we will have about 6 webcams everywhere in Hartbeespoort, as well as Vryburg and in Secunda.
All right. How important is space technology?
Oh, for us, I think that is the future. Space technology touches us in all our lives. If we look at GPS, for instance, 5 years ago, GPS was not in everybody's hands. Today, all the phones have GPSs in. And you can just imagine the technology and the commerce that was created around that. So in space, there's a lot of things that we don't know yet, and that can be beneficial to us, and in studying the Earth.
As the Secunda Amateur Radio Club, you are collaborating with SANSA in South Africa. Can you just tell us about that relationship?
Yes, it happened at the Amateur Satellite Conference in South Africa. I've met up with the people from SANSA, and we've decided to work together on this initiative. It's expensive, and you need some backup as well. And we get the technology backup and also from SANSA.
All right, Christo Creek from the Secunda Amateur Radio Club. Thank you very much for being a part of our network tonight.
It's a pleasure.
Certainly has been insightful. Now, in the last of our Heritage Month series, looking at great South African inventions, we look at the Please Call Me service. It's hard to believe no one had thought of this before South Africa did.
Love it or hate it, South Africans can boast about the controversial cell phone service that helps you to get in touch with friends and family, even when one does not have airtime. The service allows users who have no airtime to send a Please Call Me text message to any number to alert the receiver that they wish to be called back. Despite the legal issues as to who exactly owns the rights to this service, one thing is certain, it is 100% South African. Both former Vodacom employee Nkosana Makate and ex-MTN employee Ari Khan have laid claims to the invention, with the matter of ownership being left to the courts. It appears the idea was pitched in the year 2000 and Vodacom launching it in 2001. Fast forward to 2014, many around the world have taken to the service that has come to be something of a God-given right.
News Network at SABC.co.za and email. After the break, we'll chat about some problems iPhone 6 users have been reporting.
Zoom into Africa. This is Ghana. The president is Mr. John Dramani Mahama. Ghana got independent from the United Kingdom on 6 March in 1957. The population is more than 25 million people. One of Ghana's major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is cedi.
Welcome back. Now, Apple says it's fixing a security problem in some versions of its operating system for Mac computers. This is to try and fight the shell shock bug affecting more than 2/3 of machines connected to the internet. Now, on the iPhone, some iPhone 6 users have said that their new gadgets bend in the pocket. Apple quickly responded that only 9 customers have reported these incidents. Now, joining us from Cape Town to discuss this is Stuart Thomas from Mimburn. Hello, and thank you for being a part of our network, Stuart.
Thanks, Mr. Thanks for having me on.
Now, how big is the problem of bending phones?
Well, it's if Apple is to be believed, it's a small problem. If the internet's to be believed, it's a massive problem. But we don't think it's going to be as big a problem as some people have stated as it is. Practically, it's been more of a public relations problem for Apple because they've done a lot of tests, especially in the week after people reported that their iPhones were bending on various phones, and they found that most phones will bend under extreme stress. You just have to make sure that you don't wear too skinny jeans and that you don't have them in your back pocket and put your phone under too much stress.
Mm-hmm. Apart from people not wearing too skinny jeans, do you think that Apple responded adequately to these concerns by users?
Well, it was a fairly typical Apple response, and it's of all the troubles that they've had with their phones in recent years, because there's inevitably a bug with a launch somewhere that'll happen. If you cast your mind back to a few years ago, there was AntennaGate, for instance, and then there was the iPhone 5's battery problems. Those they managed to resolve with software updates and by fixing them in later versions of the phone. This one's a little bit more difficult to fix, so its response was about as good as you can expect it to be. I think to dismiss it as being only 9 reported instances is a bit short-sighted, because you will get people who will have their phones break and will just take it back to get a new one without reporting it to anyone.
Now, Stuart, it's interesting that you're talking about software. Now, Apple has had software problems as well this week. Can you just tell us a bit about that?
Yes, so that was a rather unfortunate week for Apple. It was just essentially, it was a few bugs in iOS 8, the new version of its mobile operating system that runs on iPhones and iPads, and they were causing people's devices to malfunction in some not so pretty ways. So not a great week for Apple, but it did manage to clear up the bugs pretty quickly. But as a general matter of course, it's generally not a great idea to download an operating system within the first few days of it going live. It's best just to wait a while, let everybody else experience the problems, and wait for Apple to, or whichever company has made the operating system, to fix the bugs before downloading them.
So they quickly responded a newer version of that software. So we take it that the problem is solved now.
Yes.
Now, Apple makes half of its profits from iPhone sales. Now, should they worry about these problems that people have been experiencing this week?
Well, in a way, it was bad PR. It was bad for publicity stakes, and it might put a minor dent in sales for the next couple of weeks. But we've got to remember that we're talking about devices here that Apple sold 10 million devices, which was a record for it in its first opening weekend for the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus. So I think give it a couple of weeks, and as the phone keeps going into new markets, I think it's probably going to sell as well, if not better, than any previous Apple devices.
Yeah. Now, do you think Steve Jobs would be proud of the new iPhone?
That's a difficult question to answer, especially considering he always hated the idea of making the iPhone any bigger than it was.
Yeah.
But it's gradually increased in the post-Jobs era. And we've got to remember that this is Tim Cook's Apple now, not Steve Jobs's.
Stuart Thomas from Mimben, thank you very much for being a part of our network tonight.
Pleasure, thank you.
Now let's take a look at how some have been sharing in social media. 3 years ago, Kenyan Dennis Kimeto was a struggling farmer. Today, his name was trending all over the world on Twitter as he broke the men's marathon world record. Kimeto was competing in the Berlin Marathon in Germany. In South Africa, the country's rugby team was trending with #Bokke. The Springboks scored 3 late tries and beat Australia 28-10 in Cape Town yesterday. Many have been celebrating with them in social media. Thousands of pro-democracy protesters have been clashing with the police in Hong Kong. The hashtag that's been popular on Twitter is Occupy Hong Kong. These protests come after China completely ruled out democratic elections in Hong Kong in 2017. Zulu King Shaka died on 24 September in 1824. That day was initially known as Shaka Day, but it is now called Heritage Day in South Africa. We leave you with a compilation showing how some South Africans celebrated Heritage Day. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook and Twitter. We're on News Network at sabc.co.za and email. From Ms. Phumelele Zondi and the rest of the team, have a good one.
SABC News, we've got Africa covered.
In Parliament, Higher Education and Training Minister Bladen Nzimande has conceded that the bursary scheme is not enough to meet the growing demand from students.
Funding for universities is not enough. We'll be open about that. We will continue to ask for more from government as a department.
We've always said that the NSFAS budget must be 16 billion rand and that no qualifying student must be prevented from studying just because they cannot afford to do so.
There's been concern about citrus exports to Europe and investment contracts.
There are more opportunities for us to sell sugar, wine, ethanol, some fruit products than we had before, and that could create jobs.
That's business news, weekdays at 6 p.m. on SABC News.